Chapter 2: To Live in the Cave of Time. It began not with a decision, but with a rhythm. The first days after the cold pulled back like a dying tide were not days at all, not in the strict sense. There was no time, only breath. Nicholas didn't think, he breathed. He didn't remember, he responded. The cave had no calendar, no sunrise, only dim light through the fractured aperture in the stone ceiling that told him he was not yet dead. And Boba, the cat, the muse, the whispering shadow of warmth, curled beside him without asking questions. She did not leave. Later, when he would try to recall the order of things, Nicholas would only be able to speak in symbols. The pale sun that filtered in like a hesitant ghost. The ache in his bones that felt older than memory. The way Boba once brought him a mouse, dead but not mangled, laid at his side like a sacrament. These were not signs of recovery, they were reminders of being. And being in the state he was in was more than enough. Food was not hunted so much as discovered, grubs beneath rotting logs, the occasional squirrel, stripped bare and fire-charred. Nicholas found a rusted tin in the back of the cave once, half filled with cracked grain, possibly forgotten by a hiker long since devoured by the wind. They cooked it slowly, in a flat rock he hollowed out with heat and time. The meal was bitter, but they ate it like it was communion. At some point, when, days later, weeks, his hands stopped shaking. His speech returned, if only to himself. He found a word scratched into the stone wall of the cave. November. Whether it was meant as a date, a name, or a warning, he didn't know. But it marked time. And with time came orientation. Not to a map or a plan, but to the simple sense that time was passing again, which meant they were not dead, and perhaps not damned. There was a moment, not marked by any particular drama, when Nicholas realized he and Boba were surviving, that the cave had gone from tomb to temple, that she was no longer simply curled beside him for warmth, but had become a kind of sentinel. She watched the entrance now. She hunted. She meowed at him sharply when he wandered too far, as if the edge of the trees were the mouth of some devouring god. And so they lived. They lived like outlaws without a law to break. They lived like saints without a liturgy. The days grew less jagged. His fingers learned to split bark, to dig, to sew thread through fabric he'd pulled from a lost hiker's pack near the stream that cut ice through the woods. His legs grew strong again. His beard thickened. The blue light from the crack in the ceiling began to feel less alien, and he forgot how to long for anything outside the cave. But then, how long had it been? One morning, if it was morning, Nicholas stared at the frost on the stone floor and asked the cave aloud, "Where are we?" He didn't mean geographically. He meant cosmically, existentially. He asked it with the full weight of someone who might not want the answer. And when no answer came, he stood, stretched his stiff limbs, and whispered again, "Where the hell are we?" He tried to remember before. He couldn't, not clearly. There had been a fall or a collapse or a walk into the snow, but there were no towns in his memory, no cities, no family. Just hunger. The hunger of needing to know that he existed. And the cave, for all its silence, had not lied to him. He did exist. His skin had healed, his thoughts returned. He could move, and now he had to decide, was survival the point? Or was survival only the beginning? He went to the mouth of the cave. Boba followed. He looked out and saw nothing but trees, silent, snow-capped, staring back at him like witnesses who had no need to testify. "Okay," he said, "let's go." He didn't know where, but he had to try, because he was alive, and the dead don't ask questions. Boba meowed softly and brushed against his leg. Nicholas took one step, then another. Then the world opened. And the path, whatever path there was, began to wind out like a whispered invitation from a god who no longer spoke. Or maybe had never spoken at all. He did not know how long they'd lived like that, he and the cat. Days folded into each other like lapping shadows, no edges, no clear lines, just the blur of small survival. They had not spoken. How could they? But they had communicated. The flick of her tail meant stay back. The soft pad of her paws on his chest meant rise. The hollow growl in his stomach often echoed in her own. Hunger was their common tongue. Outside, something shifted. A sound. No, less than a sound. The pressure of silence changing texture. Nicholas stepped toward the mouth of the cave and saw it. A melt. Not sudden, not total, but it was a thaw. The snow on the bark had begun to sweat. Icicles dripped as if confessing. The air had grown thin. Not warm, not kind, but no longer cruel. He knelt beside Boba, who was pawing at the edge of the stone, watching the world with what he now recognized as a kind of attentiveness. She was not tame. She was not his. But she had chosen to remain. And that, he was learning, was the highest form of loyalty. Not servitude. Presence. He breathed in deep, and it hurt slightly less than before. What had they become in this cold silence? He knew nothing of the words Sartre would later give to this kind of existence, nor did he think of decision as a kind of wound, a cut between the no longer and the not yet, but he felt it, in every bone, in every stare toward the widening light. The future, like the cold, came for him constantly, and he had no map but the one the ache in his gut and the rhythm of the snow revealed. And still, he chose. He chose not to eat her. That mattered. That was the first decision. She, after all, had been nourishment once, just not that kind. Warmth, contact, eyes that did not flinch when his hands trembled. In her, he saw more than utility. He saw a kind of thou, not a tool, not an it, not even a pet, a presence. This changed him. He looked out over the trees again and wondered how far it stretched. He thought of the cave not now as a prison, but as a womb. He had entered it dying and emerged not quite born, but no longer dead. The darkness had held him, not in malice, but as a mother holds a fevered child. There was a stillness to their life that, once, he would have called empty. Now he saw its contours, the sparrow flitting branch to branch in the tree, the way the wind whispered direction but not destination, a kind of revelation in place. They hunted together in their way. She stalked and he foraged. She led often. She came back always. At one point, he couldn't say when, Nicholas found himself watching her drink from a thawed stream and murmured aloud, "Thank you." Not to the cat. Not to the water. To something. To someone. He wasn't sure, but the word had welled up from the ache in him, and he hadn't stopped it. Thank you. It was not the gratitude of religion. It was not directed to any deity he could name. But it was a human word, a human impulse, a measure of something. Maybe that's what faith was. Not certainty, not confession. Just that moment when a word rises in you, like warmth, and you let it out, without knowing who hears. Maybe even the trees heard. Maybe that was enough. Boba looked back at him, meowed once, short and clipped, as if to say, "Follow me." He did, and the two of them walked, not toward civilization, not away from it either, but into the thawing world that stretched out ahead like a question that couldn't be answered yet. And that was okay, because spring had not come. But it might. And for now, that was enough.